Max, first of all, thanks for stopping by Northern Broadcasting and giving us a little update. My first question is in regards to the 2012 Farm Bill. You're a member of the U.S. Senate's Ag Committee. What are you going to do to help make sure that Montana farmers and ranchers are well represented in this day and age when everybody in Washington wants to cut budgets and they always seem to point the finger at USDA first?
Well, prior to the last Farm Bill, I went all around our state. I had about 5 or 6, I call them ag listening sessions, and just ask what do people want in the next Farm Bill. And a lot of it was a better ag disaster program, because our current ag disaster program, at least back then, wasn't working at all. A lot of talk about, make sure that the price supports made some sense. And also, third, we didn't give in to the Europeans. We're talking about negotiating with them on a WTO agreement. This last Farm Bill, I think, was pretty good, and I'm very proud of the ag disaster programs that are in there, particularly the livestock indemnity. Montana stock growers nationwide, when there's a disaster declared, get about 75% at least value of their critter, compared with 30% prior to the ag disaster program. And the same thing with the SURE program and crop losses, now up to 90% instead of what I think it was about 65% before. So all that's helped a lot. But of course, my goal is, the next Farm Bill is to make sure that we solidify our gains, and that's going to be to make sure that that floor is there for agriculture, and also much more aggressive in getting other countries to open up their borders to our products. Take beef, for example. I mean, it's just ridiculous the rate at which, especially European countries, don't take our beef.
Another hot topic these days are taxes. At the end of this year, those Bush tax cuts go away, something you voted for back in 2001. Maybe in more specifically, estate taxes, that's on the radar of every farm group, every farmer and rancher in the state. What are you going to do as a member of the Senate's Finance Committee, the leader of that committee, to help ensure that estate tax doesn't go to 55% January 1 for those estates worth $1 million? Well,
we're a farm ranch state, and those values fortunately or unfortunately keep rising, which means that estate tax is even much more important than otherwise might be. I'm quite confident that when we do pass a major tax bill this year, hopefully not to increase taxes, but at least not let keep taxes where they are, so there's an increase. It's going to extend the federal estate tax at a level which makes sense for Montanans and Americans. The trouble we're going to face, however, is that with a lot of people in the eastern part of the country, in urban areas, just don't realize how important it is that there be a quite high personal exemption, and if the rates be pretty low, there might be an exclusion for farm ranch, as long as the land is kept for farm ranch purposes. And my main challenge is going to be to get 60 votes in the Senate to persuade enough senators that we need to make these changes to make sure we got a state tax system and law that's permanent, so we don't have to go on again, off again, for operators, families can plan for the future and plan in a way where they know that when mom and dad eventually go, they keep the place for the kids.
Is there an amendment in Congress right now that guys like you and others on both sides of the aisle that can live with? Because a lot of folks just don't realize that we're land rich but cash poor, and they can't get that through their head.
Well, yeah, there's a provision offered by Senator Feinstein from California and Congressman Thompson, which basically excludes farm ranch for real estate values from federal estate taxes, so long as the place is held and is used as an operating ranch, and that's something I think makes a lot of sense.
Switching gears to climate change, a lot of farmers and ranchers are worried about the climate change legislation that many feel could boost our input costs by 50%. We know there's some proposals on the table there. As a member of the U.S. Senate, what are we going to do to help make sure that the EPA and other federal bureaucrats don't dictate how we operate our farms and ranches out here?
Well, that's my job. It's the job of all of us, frankly, back there from western states, is to make sure the EPA has got its head screwed on straight. Like the dust regulations, for example, that's another one that they're looking at. Basically, I have found, though, when we stick together as Westerners and just write a common letter or have the EPA administrator meet with us jointly, they do respond. But you got to, they will do, sometimes they'll do something nutty if you don't, take the initiative to make sure they don't do something nutty. And that tends to work. So I don't know. We're not going to see a climate change bill this year. because American people just know that that's too much to take on, and because Americans are quite fearful of the additional costs, particularly at a time in American history where people are worried about the future. The times are more uncertain. It's hard for business to invest, hard for business to hire. But my main job is to do what I can is just to help get the income that Montana's need, but also predictability and certainty. So that's why I think it's not wise to enact some of these laws right now at this time, which cause uncertainty.
So in the next Congress, if somebody brings up a greenhouse gas emission issue or trying to regulate greenhouse gas emissions through the Clean Air Act, I know Senator Rockefeller had an amendment out there that put a 2-year moratorium on that. Would that be something you would support?
Well, I'm very interested in Rockefeller's delay. There was a Clean Air Act bill, climate change bill, a couple years ago. It was in the committee I'm on. I voted against it because I thought it went too far. It just didn't make a lot of sense. But I don't know. It's hard to predict what the environmental community is going to push in terms of climate change next year. I don't know, but the Rockefeller approach makes a lot of sense.
What about national monuments and the use of that Antiquities Act in states like Montana and others to, in the waning hours of a presidency, go against everything that these town hall meetings have said? What can we do? Maybe we need to do something like Wyoming and just not allow national monuments in the state.
Well, it's wrong. I remember Clinton did it a few years ago. I think it was Utah, if I recall correctly. There's some talk about maybe a monument established by this president up in our state. It's wrong. I oppose it. I think, to be honest, as long as our Montana delegation is steadfastly opposed to it, and we are, that it won't happen. But we'll have to do whatever it takes to make sure it doesn't.
And finally, let's talk about wolves. Last week's decision by Judge Malloy. A lot of people are frustrated by the fact that these federal judges like him kind of legislating from the bench, going against sound science, especially when states like Montana spent millions and millions of dollars to have the wolf delisted and then to have a federal judge put it back on the list.
Yeah, it's gone too far. It's whether you're a stock grower worried about wolves, or whether you're a hunter, you're worried about wolves killing all the elk and the deer. It's just gone too far. The experts say we really need only about 100 wolves in Montana to maintain the species. And there are over 500 of them. And unfortunately, the wolf season for this year is postponed. I mean, it's killed. No pun. It's just stopped, and that's wrong. You need to manage the wolves. I've introduced legislation. I have not yet. I'm writing legislation now to allow states to manage populations within their own state, so we in Montana could, with appropriate conditions. But there's got to be a way to manage the wolves, and right now it's not being managed.